Today, we get the pleasure of driving Toyota's latest big boy, the 2024 Grand Highlander. Now, if you have a few kids and you're shopping for a 3-row crossover, maybe you went to a Toyota dealership and you looked at the regular Highlander, as soon as you open the trunk or you try and put someone in the 3rd row, you're gonna be thinking, I don't know if this is really big enough for my needs. Well, the Grand Highlander solves that problem because this is a long vehicle. It's over 200 inches long, and that translates to space for adults in the front row, adults in the 2nd row, and adults in the 3rd row. No longer is the 3rd row just for the kids that you're gonna squeeze back there, those poor souls. Now, Toyota is selling the Grand Highlander in 3 trims, at least to start. There is no LE trim, that's the base trim that you'd find on the regular Highlander or on the Sienna. Instead, this starts at the XLE, so you get a little more creature comforts. There's, for instance, no cloth seating option in the Grand Highlander. It starts with soft tex leather, but it also means that you don't have to take too many steps up before you get into the Limited or this top-tier Platinum trim. Platinum trim, obvious because we have 20-inch Platinum wheels. They're 18s on the XLE trim. But I also, despite the wheels, think that there's something really nice and understated about the Grand Highlander. Come around to the back with me. For instance, the Grand Highlander badging, it's not stamped on in big, bright silver letters like you see on so many vehicles. Instead, it's just embossed, body colored. It's subtle. You know, it's tough for a vehicle this size to do anything subtle, but this really manages to do it. I also think that, at least in photos, it looked a little bland to me, but in the flesh, or the metal, I should say, you'll notice things like this crease here and this crease down here and how there's kind of this flattening around the wheel arches. It really is a handsome vehicle. And up front, you've got, well, you have a chrome strip, because again, Platinum trim, but if you look at the front grille, you have this thinner slat up here above the larger grille down below, and correct me in the comments if you think this is ludicrous, but I see a little bit of 4Runner design language in here. And we know that that is a very popular SUV, and it's an incredibly stylish SUV. So it's cool to see Toyota extend some of that cohesive design language to the new models in its lineup. But before we get too deep in this, I want to remind you to please subscribe to the CarGurus YouTube channel. You can go to cargurus.com to read so many reviews of cars like this, other 3-row SUVs. But first, let's go driving. A few years ago, I had a chance to take a Kia Sorento on a 2,300-mile road trip. And originally, I thought I was going to be taking a Ford Mustang Mach-1, so I was a little bummed with the Sorento, but it quickly became apparent to me that when it comes to a great road trip vehicle, what's under the hood comes second, and what's under your butt comes first. So that car is incredibly comfortable, and similarly, I'm blown away by how comfortable these seats are. The visibility is really good. I mean, the greenhouse in the Grand Highlander is spectacular, and at least in this top-tier Platinum trim level, the materials are excellent. So you can get the interior upholstered in gray or black, or if you really spend the money, you can get this beautiful Portobello brown color. It looks really nice. And the stitching is super clean. It's very even. I also really like this wood inlay trim panel here. It's not the softest material, but it's also not like a really dingy plastic, which is nice. The steering wheel feels good. It's got like a good width to it. It fits the hands really well. And this is a really cool little tech feature. This car is equipped with facial recognition software. So you can opt in, which means you can opt out if you're uncomfortable with it. But if you opt in, this bar that's right here, it'll look at your face. And once you have everything set up, it'll remember you. So when you sit down, it'll automatically put your radio settings and your seat adjustment settings. The CX-90 has this as well. And I think it is a brilliant feature. It just makes it feel like your car. And if you split a car with your spouse or if your kids drive it, well, being able to get in and not have to readjust your seat and change the radio presets, it just gives it a level of personalization that I'm super, super into. Next up on the road trip checklist is storage space. So that isn't just how much can you fit in the trunk, that's where are you gonna put your stuff. And Toyota's done a really smart job with the center console in this car. So first off, this bin, it slides back like this. So yeah, just like this. So you can reach in to grab your things. My camera is in here right now. But critically, you don't have to lift it up to get in there. So nobody's moving my arm so that they can get their iPad. Now ahead of this, we have that drive mode selector, and ahead of that, we actually have 3 cup holders. They are big cup holders, particularly this one in the front. This will fit like a 32-ounce hydro flask style water bottle. And in our car ahead of that, we have a wireless charging pad, plenty of storage space up here. And if you're anything like me, you're gonna love this. Lots of physical buttons and knobs. It's a beautiful touch screen, but you don't have to use only touch inputs. You can, we want to raise the fan, boom, got that. You want to put on the heated seat, boom, got that. I don't have to go into the touch screen to do those things. Yes, you might get used to that if it's your car. I'm not saying that touch screens are inherently bad. I'm just saying that buttons are inherently easy. Behind the wheel, the Toyota Grand Highlander definitely feels a little bigger than a normal Highlander, which I've always appreciated for being a 3-row SUV crossover that doesn't feel nearly the size of a 3-row. This is much more in line with a Telluride or a Pilot. It's not quite as dramatic as a real body-on-frame SUV like a Tahoe, but it doesn't feel quite as small. The steering could provide a little more feedback. It's a little numb, it's a little less precise than I would like, particularly given how well the Pilot steers, or frankly the Telluride and the Palisade steer. But for most 3-row crossover drivers, steering's not gonna be a priority. What might be a priority is the acceleration, the pickup. And so we are currently driving the gas model. So it's the 2.4 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. There is no more V6, and it makes 265 horsepower, 310 pound-feet of torque. It's run through an 8-speed automatic transmission, and overall it's good. I would worry that less than this, like if you get the hybrid, it might feel a little underpowered, but I also don't feel like you're gonna drive this engine and say, oh, I wish I got the hybrid max. Not unless you want the extra power paired with some pretty impressive fuel economy. So what I know is it makes 362 horsepower, 400 pound-feet of torque. That comes from a 2.4 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder like we have here, but it's been hybridified. Something tells me that 400 pound-feet of torque in this vehicle is not going to feel quite as sedate as what we're working with here. It also is going to be able to tow 5,000 pounds, which is plenty for most drivers. Now the Highlander Hybrid, Grand Highlander Hybrid, I'm always going to forget to include Grand. The Grand Highlander Hybrid, that's a totally different story. That one is focused on efficiency, but it doesn't give you all that big power. Regardless of which powertrain you choose, you get 3 standard drive modes. There's Eco, Normal, and Sport. Heads up, 3-row crossover like the Grand Highlander. Sport mode is not exactly going to light your hair on fire, and Eco mode will maybe save you a mile per gallon or 2. So let us know in the comments section which one you'd be more likely to use more frequently if you were driving a car like the Grand Highlander. If you were in this car, are you going to use Eco mode, or are you going to use Sport mode, or just keep it in Normal? Genuinely curious as to what your answer would be. Now, if you get an all-wheel drive gas model like the one we're driving today, or the all-wheel drive Hybrid Max, you get a few additional drive modes. So down here on my little rotary selector, I have mud and sand, I have rock and dirt, and then I have a switch over here, a button for snow mode. As I mentioned earlier, it is definitely a big vehicle, and the steering isn't super precise. It's actually pretty numb, but otherwise, I mean, it drives with a little more confidence than I initially expected. So it's huge. I mean, it's bigger than a Telluride, body roll isn't dramatic. It might not be quite as tight as some of the competitors, but it's not enough that it's going to bother you. And the brakes, considering the size of the vehicle, the brakes are very confidence inspiring. You know, it's a super linear pedal feel. There's no squishiness to it. I'm really happy with the brakes. I think steering can be improved a little bit. Depending on your trim, you're going to get, or excuse me, your powertrain, you're going to get a different sort of acceleration profile. Obviously, it's going to really haul the mail in hybrid max trim, and it might be a little less than you want in standard hybrid trim. But overall, given the size of the vehicle, you know, it's not quite as sharp as the new Mazda CX-90, which I recently had a chance to drive and was super impressed with, but it's not going to turn you off. In the second row, the first thing that's immediately noticeable is just how much space I have back here. So this seat is set to my preferred driving position. I'm about 5 foot 11 inches tall, and I have tons of leg room. I've got tons of headroom, even with this beautiful panoramic sunroof. My shoulders aren't cramped. I also really like that there is this really nice center console that's removable. Little Vanna White display for you here. And I can just toss that in the front seat and show you how easy it is to get to the back. So let's grab this lever, pull it forward, slide it, and just do a little scooch. In the back seat, I've got more than 35 inches of leg room here. That's incredible for this class of vehicle. It's genuinely comfortable. It could use a little more thigh support, but that's kind of par for the course with the engineering, the packaging of cars like this. And I'm a fully grown adult. I'm not uncomfortable. I could sit back here for an hour, maybe more, no problem at all. And my favorite little detail, favorite might be a strong word, but something I really like, and it seems little, is this plastic bit right here. It acts as a step. It makes getting out so easy, so graceful, almost elegant. Who's gonna complain? Another big selling point for the Grand Highlander is the amount of cargo space that you get. So with the third row in place, you get about 21 cubic feet of cargo space, and that's pretty impressive, but it gets better when you start folding these down. Fold down the third row and you're up to about 58 cubic feet. And if you fold down the second and the third row, you get a whopping 98 cubic, or 97.5, close enough, we'll call it 98 cubic feet of cargo space. Put that in perspective. Not only do the competitors to this car, like the Ford Explorer or the Honda Pilot, the Kia Telluride, they get about 87 cubic feet, so you get a lot more than those. But also the Toyota Sienna, a minivan, because it doesn't have removable second row seats, well, that only maxes out at 101, and that's just not that much more than this. In terms of technology, my favorite thing about the Toyota Grand Highlander is that there is no tiny little screen on the base trim. The XLE, the Limited, and the Platinum trim all get the same interface. It's a 12.3-inch color touchscreen display, and we're seeing it more frequently in modern Toyotas. Some of the older models, you know, they were using that software that felt like it was from Jurassic Park. You know, it's just too old. This new stuff looks good, and it's pretty impressive as well. There are a lot of features that you're gonna find on all the competition. Sirius XM radio, for instance, that comes with a 3-month trial subscription. But then there's some things that are a little more special. So for instance, excuse me, we've got to drop down to a 25 here, so we're gonna start crawling a little bit. But for instance, you can now link your Apple Music or your Amazon Music. If you have those accounts, you can link them directly to the car's infotainment. There's also an intelligent assistant, so just say, "Hey, Toyota," and it will change the radio station for you. It'll adjust the climate settings. You just have to tell it what you want to do. There's also cloud-based navigation. That's an available feature. And similarly, a 24/7 like live assistant, concierge style service that's also available. So that stuff really does do a nice job of separating the Grand Highlander from some of its competitors. The Grand Highlander also continues Toyota's recent reputation for including advanced driver assistance systems as standard features, and not just the basic ones that we see on pretty much every new car these days. You also get stuff like blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert as standard features. Those still aren't a given in the marketplace, so it's great to see them here. You also have automatic emergency braking, you have lane following assist, or excuse me, lane tracing assist and lane departure warning. And the lane departure warning system can identify 3D objects like the guardrail that I'm going by right then. Beyond that, there's adaptive cruise control, which now has 4 settings for the following distance instead of the usual 3, and you get road sign recognition as a standard feature. I know I've said standard features a lot when talking about safety on this, but you have to remember this is at its core a family vehicle. You know, it's got seating for 7 or 8 people. You're going to have your kids in the back, and when you look at this segment, all that safety stuff, it just means more. For whatever reason, a lot of shoppers who really do need a minivan, they need 3 rows, they need cargo space, they still want to buy a crossover. And for them, the Toyota Grand Highlander is here to at least try to provide the best of both worlds. So how much does that cost? Well, unlike the Sienna, which you can get in a base LE trim for about $35,000 and change, a little more than that with the destination fee, the Grand Highlander starts a little north of $43,000. Again, that's before the destination fee. But this starts at the XLE trim, not the LE trim, so you do get some more bells and whistles. And if you get a Sienna XLE, well, you're definitely spending north of $40,000, so the premium isn't that much. And on the top end of things, yes, a $58,000 plus price tag for the Platinum Hybrid Max, that can look a little scary, but it's less than the starting price for the Toyota Sequoia. So this really does fit nicely in the gap between the two. So thank you for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments section below. Does this bridge the gap between the Highlander, which I've always thought was a little too small to be a true family vehicle, and the Sequoia, which is a big body-on-frame SUV and overkill for a lot of shoppers? As always, we're thrilled that you chose to watch this video. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Head to cargurus.com for my full written review, and we will see you next time.